In a beautiful home nestled in one of the city's quiet neighborhoods, lived a man named Mike. He was 50, with graying hair and eyes full of experience, but still alive with energy. He lived with his 18-year-old son, his only child. The house echoed with sounds, laughter, late-night conversations, and sometimes friendly debates about football or old movies. Mike had been unemployed for a few months, but he saw that as an opportunity to be closer to his son. That morning, just like always, he picked up his cup of coffee, sat down by the window, glanced at the street, and said with a smile, "Maybe today will be a good day." After sipping the last drop of his coffee, Mike put on a plain shirt, grabbed his usual khaki jacket, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the soft sunlight filtered through the trees lining the sidewalk. As he walked in the quiet street, he thought about the future, running through possible ways to find work, calling old friends, checking job boards and shop windows. He hadn't gone far when something caught his eye. A black handbag, abandoned, lying right next to the curb. Mike hesitated, looked around, then slowly approached and picked it up. He set aside his doubts and gently unzipped the bag. He had no idea what to expect, but what he saw stunned him. The bag was halfway filled with large bills. For a moment, he froze. His mind raced. This money could solve all his problems. But standing there, something inside him whispered, what if someone's whole hope is in that money? He carefully searched the bag until he found a small card with a phone number. Without hesitation, he called. A young man's voice answered, full of worry, but when he heard the bag had been found, he sighed in relief and gratefully agreed to meet. A few minutes later, the bag's owner arrived and took it with visible joy. After a few words of thanks, he asked if Mike was looking for work. When Mike nodded, the man paused, smiled, and said, "I run a bakery nearby. I need a morning delivery guy. If you're interested, come by." Mike smiled. Not just because of the job offer, but because of the quiet joy that bloomed in his heart, knowing he had made the right choice. The next morning, Mike stood in front of the bakery, neat and refreshed. The air still carried a morning chill, but something warm was flowing inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He introduced himself, hopped on a delivery scooter, and began his route with a list of orders. From the very first hours, he felt good. The customers' smiles, the smell of fresh pastries, and the sense of being useful made his own smile more genuine than ever. Weeks passed. Mike had settled into the job, memorizing addresses, even being welcomed with tea by some regulars. But something began to catch his attention. Many deliveries, at regular intervals, were going to different addresses around the city, but always to the same recipient. The sender's name kept changing, but the receiver stayed the same. Mike wasn't naturally suspicious, but this time, something didn't feel right. Doubt lodged in Mike's mind like a thorn, but he'd made a promise to himself, unless something directly concerned him, he wouldn't overstep. He liked his job, it gave him stability and a sense of security, something he hadn't had in a while. But that peace didn't last. One day, one of the bakery's regulars, a kind middle-aged woman who always greeted Mike warmly, ordered a cake and left the shop smiling. Mike was just putting on his helmet when he heard a scream. She'd been hit by a cyclist and had fallen, her cake crushed beside her. Mike rushed over to help. But as he picked up the smashed cake, something caught his eye. Buried under the splattered cream was a small packet containing a white powder. He froze. That vague suspicion now had a face, a disturbing, undeniable truth. Mike could no longer ignore it. Something inside him screamed that this time, staying silent would be betrayal. He felt a weight of responsibility, not just for himself, but for everyone who might unknowingly be caught in this. He almost called the police, but stopped himself. Not yet, he thought. I need to be sure first. The next day, he took the day off. Dressed plainly, he set out to one of those suspicious addresses. He waited patiently until the mysterious recipient emerged, a man with an ordinary appearance and a small bag in hand. Mike quietly followed him on foot. The man's path didn't lead downtown as Mike expected. Instead, it veered into quieter, more deserted alleys. Finally, he entered a narrow passage that ended at an old, nearly abandoned bridge. From a safe distance, Mike watched. Under the bridge, it felt like another world, a grim, forgotten place filled with trash, peeling walls, and people with worn-out faces and hollow eyes. The man stood in the shade, seemingly waiting. One by one, people approached him. Their eyes were full of need, and their movements were quick, secretive. He pulled small packets from his pocket and placed them silently into their hands. Mike held his breath, then chose to follow one of the buyers, a young man with a gaunt face and a ragged coat. The man walked toward a crumbling building. Inside, he groaned as he entered, pushed open a half-broken door, and sat. With trembling hands, he opened the packet, mixed the powder with some liquid, and injected it into his arm. Moments later, his face relaxed. Where there had been pain, now there was calm, like someone who had found release. Mike watched in disbelief. Such deep peace on a face so broken, it shook something in him. He wasn't sure whether he should feel worried or heartbroken. Mike sat quietly in a corner of the ruined place. The wind howled. The air smelled of rust and damp, and that haunting image of the young man, now calm and light, circled in his mind. Questions swirled. How could something that came from a drug bring such peace? Could it be a cure, not just a poison? He stared at the ground, thinking of the young man's eyes, just moments ago filled with suffering, and now, like open windows to the sky. A faint smile touched Mike's lips. With a quiet voice, he said, "Maybe his body needed it." And with that thought, the sharp edges of doubt and guilt softened, like embers that still glowed, but no longer burned. Mike drove home with a quiet smile and a strange sense of peace. The evening air was cool on his face, and his mind felt like it had just solved a puzzle. But just before he reached home, something caught his eye. A familiar motorcycle, the one that had replaced him, was parked in front of his house. He stopped and watched. The delivery guy, holding a white box, walked toward the door. A moment later, Jack, Mike's son, opened it and took the package. The delivery man left without a word. Mike froze. The smile vanished. A cold shock settled over him as his gaze locked on the closed door, where his son had just disappeared. His mind twisted again. A voice deep inside whispered, familiar and painful. "Does my son need it too?"